Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Wagner, and I'm the Accessible Ohio Specialist for the Southwest area of the state. I'm also an occupational therapist and a Certified Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator. Today's presentation on personal care is the fifth in the Accessible Ohio Playbook six-part webinar series. Presenting alongside me today is my colleague, Shelly. Would you like to introduce yourself and explain the accessibility features of today's webinar?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Shelly Burkhart, and I'm the Northwest Accessible Ohio Specialist and a Certified Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator. We plan for accessibility from the start. We use the accessibility checker that is built into Microsoft 365 to review the resource guide and PowerPoint. We address color contrast, font style and size, and add alternative text, also known as alt text, to visual images. Also, in our delivery, we mention each other by name as the conversation goes back and forth to indicate who's speaking. This can be helpful when attendees are receiving this information through services like American Sign Language interpretation and live captioning. After the webinar, we edit the transcript and fix any captioning errors before uploading the webinar to our on-demand library. We also include a reasonable accommodation statement in our invitation to the webinar, so if an attendee needs an accommodation, they know who to contact to ask. Taking these steps up front can make this presentation more accessible and inclusive for everyone. Julia, can you give the attendees an overview of our webinar series, please?
Absolutely. The Accessible Ohio Playbook six-part webinar series started with the fundamentals, which describe three main considerations when designing and enhancing the accessibility and inclusion of all environments. These include the Accessible Ohio Priorities, the Americans with Disabilities Act, known as the ADA, and universal design. The second session on planning and awareness included best practices for creating accessible websites, ideas for communicating the accessibility features an organization offers, and strategies to train customer-facing staff on disability awareness and accessibility. The playbook continued with the second priority, navigation. This webinar shared best practices for arriving, entering, and moving throughout a space, general elements to apply to all these areas, and ways to enhance accessibility to create a culture of inclusion. The fourth session shared our third priority, experience, which provided information about common accessibility tools and practices, reasonable accommodations and modifications, and strategies to go beyond accessibility and create inclusive experiences. Today's session discusses our final priority, personal care. During today's session, we will share information about the Accessible Ohio program and how we can be a resource to Ohio's businesses, communities, venues, attractions, and employers through the services we offer. This will include an overview of this priority and ideas for accessibility features and universal design concepts related to personal care. Throughout the webinar, we will demonstrate how Accessible Ohio can connect our partners with best practices for accessibility and inclusivity. The next and final session of the Accessible Ohio Playbook webinar series is called the Game Plan, and we'll address how to establish and prioritize goals for accessibility and inclusion, and then create a plan for achieving these goals. Shelly, let's get things started off with a brief overview of Accessible Ohio.
Sure. Accessible Ohio specialists partner with employers, businesses, communities, venues, and attractions to help identify barriers, establish goals for accessibility, connect them with resources for accessibility enhancements, and provide information about potential funding sources. Our team's mission is to prioritize accessibility from the start, promote inclusiveness, and ensure everyone can experience Ohio in an equitable way. We strive to move beyond the minimum guidelines of the ADA and focus on universal design, both of which are addressed throughout this webinar series. Accessible Ohio specialists provide consultations, education, and resources.
Shelly, because accessibility touches everything we do, we like to describe it as a journey we're all on. To help Accessible Ohio partners prioritize where to start and plan their next steps, we've organized accessibility into three main fundamentals. This begins with our Accessible Ohio priorities, which include planning and awareness, navigation, experience, and personal care. Then we continue with guidance from the ADA and to a larger extent, the concepts included with universal design. This webinar focuses specifically on the fourth priority, personal care, to create an environment that is accessible, inclusive, and welcoming to all.
Julia, in our previous webinars, we discussed planning a visit to a venue, the process of arriving, entering, and moving throughout a space, and what we do or enjoy while at an attraction or venue. Now we will discuss the personal care priority, which includes resources to address caring for and attending to personal needs when out enjoying the community. This may include using the restroom, getting a drink of water, taking a break from the environment, and more. We are going to share inclusive strategies to empower individuals and families to manage their personal needs while in the community. In this webinar, we will discuss strategies for making spaces dedicated to personal needs accessible. Then we will discuss common tools and practices venues can offer for management of sensory needs. And we will share information about service animals and options for creating service animal relief areas. Julia, can you start us off with strategies for making spaces dedicated to personal needs accessible?
Absolutely, Shelly. Many of us have been in the community and needed to take a break to manage our personal needs, like using the restroom or getting a drink of water. Restrooms, drinking fountains, and other amenities let us stay at an event or visit a venue for as long as we wish. It's important to ensure these spaces are accessible so everyone can use them. The concept of accessible design comes from the ADA Civil Rights Law and the 2010 ADA Standards for Accessible Design. We are going to explore some of this guidance and how it relates to aspects of personal care that many venues share, such as accessible restrooms. We will discuss universal changing tables, which contribute to an inclusive environment and were adopted into our Ohio Building Code in March of 2024. And we will share guidance on accessible drinking fountains. Okay, let's start off with an overview of accessible design.
Great idea, Julia. Accessible design is informed by the ADA. This civil rights law makes it unlawful to discriminate against individuals with disabilities in all facets of public life. It covers aspects of work such as hiring process and employment, and aspects of public life such as accessing goods at a store or activities like going to the theater. It also covers state and local government programs, activities, and services, such as summer camps offered by a public school. The 2010 ADA Standards for Accessible Design, which we refer to as the standards, were created by the Department of Justice as a resource for entities with responsibilities under the ADA. It provides minimum guidelines for making sites, buildings, facilities, and elements accessible for public use. The standards and the ADA work together to provide guidance towards removing barriers and providing equal access to individuals with disabilities. We will apply the concept of accessible design to tools and practices for making spaces dedicated to personal needs accessible. Accessible restrooms are often the first thing that comes to mind when thinking about personal care while out in the community. I have a question for the audience to get us thinking about accessible restrooms. True or false? The only ADA criteria to make a restroom accessible is having enough space to maneuver in the area. Please choose the response you think best answers the question by selecting true or false, or enter your answer into the chat. Okay, Julia, we're getting some answers. Don't see much changes at this point. So it looks like the majority of the audience thinks that this answer is false. The correct answer is false. The ADA addresses a variety of elements that are needed in combination to make restrooms accessible. Julia, can you tell us more?
Sure. I'll share some of the technical information our partners can expect to find in the standards. This information generally applies to accessible restrooms in various settings. First, an accessible restroom should be located on an accessible route, so individuals can navigate to it. We talked about these in session 3, which focused on ways to make maneuvering through spaces and environments more accessible. Some additional components of an accessible restroom include door maneuvering clearance, turning space, reach range, clear floor space, and knee and toe space. This sounds technical, but I'll share what is meant by these terms. Let's start with door maneuvering clearance. This is the space required to approach and open the door, as well as exit the space. Next is the turning space required to accommodate an individual using a wheelchair to turn their mobility device once inside the restroom. These guidelines ensure individuals have adequate room to enter the restroom, pass through the doorway, turn around, and then close and lock the door. Additionally, the standards include guidance for common objects in restrooms like soap dispensers, built-in trash receptacles, coat hooks, and shelves. This includes specifying reach ranges, which reflect the distance an individual reaches to use a fixture, clear floor space, which is the space required to enable an individual to access a fixture like a soap dispenser from a forward approach, and knee and toe clearance, which is the space required below surfaces to enable individuals to access a fixture like a sink without encountering a barrier like a cabinet. Also, it's important to conceal pipes and drains located below fixtures to prevent potential injury from contact with extreme temperatures. It is also helpful to make sure items like trash cans, plants, and chairs included in the restroom do not block any of these spaces and clearances to ensure it remains accessible. Shelly, the ADA also contains specifications regarding water closets, or what we also refer to as toilets.
It does, Julia. In an accessible restroom, there are a variety of locations where the water closet can be installed, as long as it has clearance on one side, which is free of obstacles blocking the path. This space is important to keep open, especially when determining the location of the lavatory, or what we also refer to as a sink, because it provides room for individuals to transfer to the water closet from the side. There are also specifications on the minimum and maximum seat height of a water closet to ensure it is accessible. Lastly, the flush control should be located on the open side of the water closet for ease of access and use. Another feature in an accessible restroom is a grab bar. Grab bars can help people lift their body and keep their balance when moving from one surface to another. In an accessible restroom, they can enable individuals to transfer to and from the water closet. The ADA provides specifications regarding the location, the length and size, and the minimum clearance of the grab bar. For example, the minimum clearance above and below the grab bar provides space for an individual to reach and use the grab bar without another object, like a toilet paper dispenser, being in the way. Another example to consider is the space between the grab bar and the wall. It's important to provide space for an individual to reach their hand around the grab bar without the space being so far from the wall that their arm could slip into the space. Julia, portable toilet units and multi-user toilet rooms share many of these same requirements to ensure accessibility. Are there any differences?
There are, Shelly. You may have seen a portable unit at a local festival. They're commonly available at temporary sites or events. In addition to locating an accessible portable unit on an accessible route, there is guidance to ensure the entrance landing provides adequate space to maneuver mobility devices around the door. For multi-user toilet rooms, which are restrooms that offer individual stalls, there are a few additional elements to consider. Toe clearance, which is the space provided below a stall partition or wall, is required below the front partition and one of the side partitions. This space enables individuals using wheelchairs to maneuver within the stall area and can help make positioning for transfers easier. Also, the stall door should be self-closing and include door pulls on both sides of the door. This permits operating the door from either side and without requiring a tight grasp of the hand or twisting of the wrist. The ADA provides guidance on the maximum physical effort it can require to open the door. Universal changing tables are another element you may see in a restroom. These are adult-sized changing tables designed for individuals to manage their personal care needs independently or with the assistance of a caregiver. Universal changing tables may be useful for a variety of people, including individuals with disabilities, families with children, older adults, and people who use a catheter. This inclusive practice provides a private and dignified way to meet personal care needs, and it can enable visitors to stay at a venue as long as they wish without having to leave early to go home to manage their personal needs. In March of 2024, the Ohio Building Code incorporated these changing tables into their building standards, which contained guidance for where adult changing tables will be required, safety features, signage requirements, and more. Accessible Ohio specialists are available to provide information to help interested partners determine what works best for their venue. We also have resources within the state, including the Changing Spaces Ohio chapter, who can provide information regarding universal changing tables. One feature on their webpage that I like is their map, which provides examples of entities across the country who have universal changing tables. The map is a helpful tool to see how other venues have incorporated universal changing tables for visitors. Another element of personal care is staying hydrated. Out in the community, drinking fountains are often available as an option. Shelly, will you share the guidance on how to make drinking fountains accessible?
Sure, Julia. The standards provide technical assistance for components of drinking fountains, such as location, clearance in space, and the controls used to access the water. Let's start with the location. Ensure the accessible drinking fountain adjoins an accessible entrance and route on every floor of the venue. Next is the minimum clearance and space around the accessible drinking fountain. These requirements ensure individuals can approach the drinking fountain from the front. There are guidelines regarding knee and toe space below the unit. This is to ensure individuals can position themselves to access the controls on the fountain. Speaking of controls, the ADA provides guidance on the maximum physical effort required to use the controls on the accessible drinking fountain. The ADA also contains specifications for the appropriate spout height and location, water flow height, and angle of the water stream. That was a lot of information. Julia, do we have a story to share to illustrate how important accessibility and inclusion are when it comes to personal care?
Shelly, I do. Corey is a mother to two children, a 9-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. Over summer break, when Corey is not teaching, she likes to take her children on a weekly trip to a place in the community. Corey's son has muscular dystrophy and requires assistance with personal care needs, which sometimes means they can visit a place for a couple hours at a time before they need to come home. Because of this, she tries to find locations that do not require long travel. Corey found out their zoo's panda cubs were now out and available to come and visit. Pandas are her son's favorite animal, but their home is located about 45 minutes away from the zoo. Unsure of whether they would have enough time to travel to and from the zoo and visit the panda exhibit, Corey reviewed information about the zoo hours to see if a trip would be possible to plan around her son's schedule. She found an announcement on the zoo's webpage stating they recently installed a universal changing table, which was available in the family restroom. Corey took her son and daughter to the zoo the following day. When they arrived, Corey used the map just inside the zoo's entrance to find the location of the universal changing table. With this information, Corey decided to visit the panda cubs and then go to the restroom. Corey's son and daughter giggled as they watched the panda cubs tumble and roll as they played with one another. After spending some time watching the cubs, Corey's son indicated he needed to manage his personal care needs. Corey used the signs along the way, which indicated the direction to travel to reach the family restroom. The sign outside the family restroom door had the international symbol of accessibility with the words adult size changing table. This informed Corey she had arrived at the correct restroom. They entered the spacious family restroom with the universal changing table. Corey drew the curtain around the changing table, and her daughter sat in a chair on the other side to wait. Corey then used the adjustable features of the table to position the table at the right height to transfer her son onto it. After Corey finished helping her son with his personal care needs, they headed back out to explore the other exhibits in the zoo. As they made their way to view the elephants, Corey smiled to herself, knowing they could stay at the zoo as long as they wished without needing to head home because they could manage her son's personal care needs right there at the zoo.
Julia, I love that story. It really highlights how making spaces accessible creates a positive experience for visitors. And with that, I think this would be a good time to pause for questions. Julie Wood, the Accessible Ohio manager, will be joining us for the question and answer portions of the webinar. If you'd like to ask a question, please enter it into the chat or raise your virtual hand. Also, we did receive some pre-submitted questions during the registration process for today's webinar. Julie, while we're waiting for questions in the chat, will you share a pre-submitted question with us, please?
Sure, Shelly. Hi, everyone. This is Julie. Our first pre-submitted question is asking, what are the biggest challenges facilities face in providing accessibility for personal care? In their question, they address two of the barriers that are common, which are financial costs and lack of education about available resources. So this is a great question. We know each organization is unique and the barriers that you face are unique also. Shelly, I know that you have some additional ideas to share.
I do, Julie, thank you. And you're correct. The individual who asked this question was correct in that financial cost and awareness can sometimes be challenges for some entities. Additional factors that I've come across include architectural barriers and concerns about historical significance. Through Accessible Ohio, we try to provide our partners with resources to help inform their decisions as they confront these challenges.
Thank you, Shelly.
Welcome.
Our next pre-submitted question is a person states that they're part of an organization that holds temporary events and festivals throughout the year, and they'd like additional information about portable toilet units and accessibility. And so, one of the best places to start is with that guidance that is in the Americans with Disabilities Act, the standards that Julia and Shelly referenced. And Julia, I know that you have some additional thoughts on this question.
Thanks, Julie. Yes, the ADA addresses the number of accessible units needed, signage, and specifications regarding various elements of the portable unit, for example, the entrance landing. We also know entities who have incorporated universal changing tables as another inclusive practice to make personal care accessible.
Thank you, Julia. Checking the chat, I don't see any questions from the attendees at this time, so thank you for the pre-submitted questions. We will have another opportunity for questions and answers towards the end of today's webinar. Julia, I will turn it back to you and Shelly to talk about sensory inclusion next. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. There are tools and practices that can help create a sensory inclusive environment for visitors. First, we will discuss what sensory needs are. Then we will share information about sensory tools and spaces. Lastly, we will consider some ideas to create sensory inclusive restrooms. So let's start with sensory needs. Everyone processes sensory information from physical surroundings in their own way. Processing refers to the way our brains receive, organize, and respond to this information. This includes information we receive through sight, hearing, touch, smell, taste, movement, and orientation. Every person, situation, and environment is unique. As a result, we may experience the same environment differently. One person may need more sensory input and another need less. For example, one person may prefer to work at a desk surrounded by natural lighting, while someone else prefers to work on a couch in a dimly lit space. Since we're on the subject, I have a question for our audience members. What helps you focus when you are working on something? Please enter your answers into the chat. While the audience is entering their strategies, Shelly, will you share a strategy you use?
Sure, Julia, I'd be happy to. To support getting my work done, I usually prefer to be in a quiet, calming environment. However, as you know, I do tend to start humming when I'm trying to complete a task and really focus on something. How about you, Julia?
Shelly, I'm a person that needs background noise. I prefer to work in the lobby of a hotel or at a cafe where there are often people walking by and conversations going on. When I'm in a space with no noise, I have a difficult time maintaining focus. Okay, let's see what ideas our audience has shared. Okay, so noise canceling headphones. Marie has mentioned lack of interruptions. could all benefit from that, Marie. Janet, the sound of a fan in the background. Danny has mentioned closing my door and limiting interruptions. I've seen multiple strategies of just having a quiet and silent environment. Also a quiet space where I can listen to music. Michelle shares my strategy of the background noise, sounds from the TV or music without lyrics. Thank you, Michelle. Greta, chewing gum and soft music. Background music and coffee and a scent-free environment. These are all great examples of ways to help manage sensory needs. Thank you for sharing. Shelly, will you share some additional sensory tools that can be helpful?
Sure. Sensory tools are items people can use to manage sensory needs. Some items may help individuals increase the sensory input their body is seeking, and other items may help individuals decrease the sensory input their body is avoiding. These tools can be included in a sensory kit for customers to use when participating in activities, or located in a sensory space to use when taking a break from the event. Here are some examples of sensory tools. For the sense of sight, a person who seeks this type of input may enjoy looking at an image with bright colors and shapes, like looking through a kaleidoscope, while a person who avoids this type of input may prefer to wear glasses with tinted lenses to decrease brightness in the space. For the sense of hearing, headphones can enable someone to listen to music and/or block out noises based on their preference. For the sense of touch, a person who seeks this type of input may enjoy holding and moving an item around in their hand like a fidget. Sensory spaces are another way entities can create an inclusive environment. These offer a designated area for individuals to take a break from an activity to manage their sensory needs by using items or tools to increase or decrease input. When planning a sensory space, there are some important things to consider. For one, how many people can use the space at the same time? A smaller area will accommodate fewer people at one time than a larger space can. If the space is at full capacity, one consideration is to set a time limit or provide time slots to sign up to use the space. Another question to consider is, what kind of environment do you want to provide? Sensory tools for a calm, quiet environment can vary from those used in a space that is alerting and loud. If the sensory space will be used for both calming and alerting inputs, consider how you can structure and organize the space to accommodate both effectively. Some examples include soundproofing walls, using room dividers and partitions, providing adjustable lighting, and offering noise-canceling headphones. It's also important to plan how to maintain and clean the space to ensure items are available throughout the visit. For example, a sensory space could place all of their available fidgets in a bin at the entrance to the sensory space so visitors can pick which items they want to use. Once the visitor is finished with the item, they can return the item to another bin at the exit that's labeled for cleaning. It is helpful to tell your customers you have a sensory space, where it is, and what sensory tools you offer. This can help them really plan their visit. One idea is to include this information on the accessibility page of your website, where you list all the accessibility features you offer.
Shelly, to share some of the different tools you may find in a sensory space, I'd like to invite our audience to participate in a polling activity with us. I'm going to describe 2 sensory spaces with some different tools, and at the end of each description, please select whether the sensory space would create a more alerting environment or a more calming environment for you. Okay, here is our first space. In the first space, the lights are dim, and there's a projector display of an image of a palm tree at a beach. And this image is moving slowly in a repetitive motion. The sounds of ocean waves are playing quietly in the background. Off in the corner of the space, you notice a beanbag chair with a fuzzy blanket. When you sit in the beanbag chair, you notice the wall to your side has a panel that includes different soft materials available to touch. Okay, please select whether this space would create an alerting or calming environment for you. Shelly, what does our audience think about the first space?
Well, Julia, it looks like the majority of our audience felt like this space would be calming. And I see some coming in the chat as well saying calming. Thank you for your input. Julia, let's hear about the next space.
Sure thing, Shelly. Okay, in the next space, the lights are bright, and there's a projector display of different colorful images, which are quickly changing from one to another. There's fast, upbeat music playing in the background. You notice several large exercise balls located around the space. As you make your way to a ball, you travel across floor mats, which create loud and squeaky noises. When you sit on the exercise ball, you notice the wall to your side has brightly colored panels that light up in random patterns. Okay, please select whether this space would create an alerting or a calming environment for you. Shelly, it looks like our audience is weighing in on it.
Okay, Julia, we have things coming in. We have some coming into the chat and we have answers. Julia, it looks like the majority of our audience though feels like this space would be alerting. Thank you so much for your answers. We really appreciate it. These are just a few examples of the tools you may see in a sensory space. Some others may include noise-canceling headphones, weighted blankets, vibrating chairs and objects, snacks, resistance bands, and more. You may have noticed the same space that was calming for you may not be calming for another individual. Let's take the example of how you and I prefer to work, Julia. You like background noise, and I prefer to work in a quiet environment. Another thing I would like to highlight is that a sensory space does not have to be an entire room.
That's right, Shelly. It can be a designated space within a room, and we've even seen examples of sensory tents and sensory walls. So really, there are a lot of different ways to create a space for individuals to manage their sensory needs.
Julia, entities can also incorporate sensory concepts throughout many of the other areas of their venue. To demonstrate this, I'd like to share a story about Victoria and how the nurse's office at her school served as a sensory space for her. Victoria was diagnosed with autism, and from a very young age, she faced challenges with managing the sensory inputs in her surroundings. As she grew older, Victoria developed strategies to efficiently manage her sensory needs and found she preferred a quiet environment. Noisy classrooms, school assignments, and numerous encounters with unfamiliar people posed new challenges when she transitioned to school. One of the main strategies Victoria used to manage her sensory needs was a quiet space. Her school did not offer a sensory space for students, and as a result, she frequently found herself in the nurse's office feeling unwell. After some time in the nurse's office, Victoria was typically able to return to her school day. After several visits, Victoria found that the environment in the nurse's office was supportive of her sensory needs. This was a quiet area which had less stimulation, and Victoria could find a balance with her sensory needs. While a nurse's office isn't necessarily the first idea to come to mind as a designated area to manage sensory needs, this space was helpful for Victoria. This may also be true when out in our communities. When there are no formally designated sensory areas available, individuals may use other spaces to manage sensory needs. These spaces may include a quiet hallway, an area outside, or even a restroom. With this in mind, Julia, will you share some ideas to create a more welcoming environment in a space like a community restroom, please?
I'd love to, Shelly. The features in restrooms can often be a source of stress for individuals. Here are some strategies venues can implement. Adjustable lighting enables individuals to adapt the brightness of the space to their comfort level. Options to use manual soap dispensers instead of automatic ones can help manage loud and unexpected noises. And lastly, signage can help to inform individuals entering the space, that automatic features are present in the restroom so they can prepare.
Julia, those were some great examples of ways to create an accessible and inclusive environment. Another way venues can demonstrate they prioritize this is through providing a designated area for service animals to manage their needs.
That's right, Shelly. These areas are called service animal relief areas. Before we provide information about the options to consider when creating these, let's share some information about service animals and guidelines surrounding them.
Great idea, Julia. The ADA defines service animals as any dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for an individual with a disability. I'd like to ask the audience to participate in a true and false question. Is this true or false? A service animal can be trained to open and close doors. Please select the response you think best answers the question or enter your answer into the chat. Okay, Julia, we have answers coming in, and it looks like the majority of our audience thought that this was true. The correct answer is true. Service animals can be trained to open and close doors for their handler, and this can be helpful to individuals with a variety of disabilities. Service animals can be trained to complete a variety of tasks, such as alerting to a sound, navigating through a space, reminding a person to take their medication, assisting a person having a seizure, and many more tasks. Julia, there are some guidelines surrounding service animals I'd like to share as well. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, enforces and regulates Title I of the ADA, and they offer guidance for employers on a variety of aspects of the law. In the EEOC guidance on reasonable accommodations, they organize accommodations into different types. One type is to modify a policy. When an employer receives a request from an employee to bring their service animal to work, the solution they may consider is modifying a no animal policy to enable the employee to bring their service animal to work with them. The U.S. Department of Justice enforces Titles II and III of the ADA and provides guidance regarding service animals, including qualifications, where they are permitted, questions that may be asked about the service animals, and more. They also provide technical assistance documents, including frequently asked questions about service animals and the ADA. Now that we've discussed information about what a service animal is and some of the guidelines about them, what can you tell us about the Service Animal Relief Area, Julia?
Shelly, a Service Animal Relief Area, or SARA, offers a designated area for an individual to manage the needs of their service animal. SARAs are commonly seen indoors, and you may have seen one at an airport. The U.S. Department of Transportation requires SARAs to be available at airports for travelers with disabilities to manage the needs of their service animals. The Federal Aviation Administration contains guidelines for service animal relief areas at airports, including how many SARAs should be in each terminal, the size and shape of the SARA, location, plumbing, the different surfaces provided, and the fencing or enclosure of the SARA. SARAs can also be incorporated in venues outside of the airport, like in our communities. It can enhance the overall experience an individual has at an event and enable them to stay for longer because their service animals' needs can be addressed. We are going to explore some of the elements to consider when planning a SARA, such as the location, the space itself, and the environment. Shelly, would you start with considerations about the location of a SARA?
Sure, Julia. When planning where the location of the SARA will be, consider the travel distance from all areas of the venue to help determine the best location. A centralized location will offer individuals an opportunity to access it from several locations throughout the venue. It's also important that the SARA can be reached by an accessible route. If the SARA is located indoors, proper ventilation and airflow will be an important factor to consider. This will help with managing odors and sanitation. If the SARA is outdoors, a location that is away from roads and moving vehicles will be important to consider as well. Lastly, installing a gate or fence around the area can provide an added layer of safety.
Shelly, another aspect to consider when developing a SARA is the space itself. When planning for the structure of the SARA space, there are several elements to include. A flat or properly graded entry to the SARA supports accessible entry into the space. It is important to ensure there is adequate space inside the SARA to accommodate an individual using a wheelchair or scooter to assist their service animal on a 6-foot leash. This space enables individuals and their service animals to move around freely to utilize the features available in the SARA. One idea is to locate animal waste containers and other features inside the SARA away from the center of the space to prevent them from creating barriers to navigating. Other key elements include the surfaces inside the SARA. There should be 2 surfaces, a hard surface for the individual to navigate on and a soft surface for the service animal to use. The surface for the service animal should have proper drainage to support regular cleaning. Shelly, what else may be considered when developing a SARA?
Julia, there are strategies to create a SARA that provides a welcoming environment to individuals with disabilities and their service animals. Service animals utilize the SARA for a main purpose, and providing a 3-dimensional prop, such as a tree or fire hydrant, can sometimes help encourage the animal to manage its needs. If the SARA is located outdoors, an overhead structure can provide shade and protection from weather conditions. It's also important that the surface intended for the service animal to use does not irritate the service animal's paws in any weather conditions or temperatures. It's helpful also to provide a method for individuals to clean their hands by washing them with soap and water or using complimentary hand sanitizer. Regular cleaning and routine maintenance can help ensure the SARA is sanitized and properly stocked with items such as disposable bags. It's also important that the cleaning products do not create a strong chemical odor and are safe for animals. Lastly, consider providing access to fresh drinking water suitable for service animals, such as water bowls, drinking fountains, or another alternative source.
Shelly, we've shared a variety of ways to make spaces dedicated to personal needs accessible. These include accessible restrooms, universal changing tables, accessible drinking fountains, sensory spaces, and service animal relief areas. These features can make a big difference. Let's listen to Jesse's story about how the steps the amphitheater took to create an inclusive environment supported him and his service animal, Cece.
Hi, my name is Jesse, and I've had epilepsy since I was 12. Over time, I've learned how to manage my seizures, and my service dog, Cece, helps let me know when I'm showing signs of an oncoming seizure. I'm also aware that I can lessen the chance of a seizure if I manage my sensory needs. For example, getting overheated can sometimes lead to a seizure, so I take steps to manage this whenever possible. When some friends and I celebrated my birthday at a concert on a hot afternoon at an outdoor amphitheater, I knew that I may need to take breaks and find an area to cool down. About halfway through the concert, I visited the venue's sensory room. The space was air-conditioned, had different seating and lighting options, and included various sensory items like headphones, fidgets, and weighted blankets. Afterwards, Cece and I visited the designated service animal relief area, which was a grassy area at the end of a smooth, accessible path. There were helpful features like disposable bags, a waste container, fresh drinking water for Cece, and hand sanitizer for when we were leaving the space. After this, we made our way back to my seat to enjoy the rest of the show. When the performance was over, my friends and I stuck around and continued to celebrate my birthday. It wasn't until the sun was setting that I realized how long we had been there. The sensory room and service animal relief area at the amphitheater not only made me feel included, They enabled me to attend the entire concert and spend time with my friends afterwards. It was a perfect birthday.
Wow, Shelly. That story really captures how accessibility enhancements for personal care can make a big impact. The amphitheater went beyond minimum guidelines to provide an inclusive environment, and it made all the difference for Jesse and Cece. With that story, I would like to open it up to the audience to ask any questions you may have. You can do so by raising your virtual hand or entering your questions into the chat. Julie is going to be joining us again and is going to start off by sharing another pre-submitted question.
Thank you, Julia. Hi again, everyone. This is Julie. Our first pre-submitted question for this Q&A break is asking how we can be more inclusive to people who use service animals. The best first place to start is reviewing that guidance that we shared from the Americans with Disabilities Act that talks about information like the definition of service animals, what questions can be asked, and more. And Shelly, I know you had some additional ideas about inclusion for service animals that you'd like to share.
I do. Thank you, Julie. I'd also maybe think about having a no animal policy. You could modify the policy to permit service animals. You could also possibly train your staff on service animal etiquette to help them better understand appropriate interactions with service animals. For instance, like not petting them or giving them treats. As a couple of ideas.
Thank you, Shelly. We do have a question in the chat from Carmen. Are businesses allowed to ask for paperwork when service animals come to their place of business, like a restaurant? And so for questions about documentation and what you can ask, again, I would point back to reviewing those guidelines on what you are able to do. We'd be happy to connect you with that information to help address that question. Thank you, Carmen. Shelly or Julie, is there anything you wanted to add to that one?
No, I think you covered that well. Thank you.
Sure. While we're waiting to see if additional questions come in, our next pre-submitted question is asking, are sensory rooms just for kids? That might be a common thought because they are common and prevalent for use for children, but they can be beneficial for people of all ages, as we just heard from Jesse and how this was helping him celebrate his 30th birthday party. Julie, what additional ideas do you have?
Julie, in addition to the wide variety of age ranges that sensory spaces can be beneficial for, there's also a wide range of venues. The amphitheater is one example of an environment where a sensory space can be helpful. Some examples of other environments where sensory space could be beneficial include fairs and festivals, sports stadiums, concert venues, libraries, amusement parks, museums, theaters, and more. Contact us if you'd like to explore incorporating a sensory space at your venue.
Thank you, Julia. And I like how you guys pointed out during the webinar that sensory spaces don't have to be a dedicated room. It could be a tent, it could be a sensory wall, a sensory area. And I think that just opens up the possibilities for the various types of environments that are out there. So thank you for all of those ideas. One last look at the chat. I don't see any additional questions coming in at this time. So thank you for the questions that we did receive. I'll turn it back to Shelly to wrap up today's webinar.
Thank you, Julie. Sorry. Thank you, Julie. We enjoyed sharing Accessible Ohio's fourth priority, personal care, with all of you. To summarize, personal care includes resources to address caring for personal needs when out enjoying the community. We shared strategies for making spaces dedicated to personal needs accessible. We discussed some common tools and practices venues can offer for management of sensory needs and options for creating service animal relief areas. Lastly, we shared strategies to create a culture of inclusion. Remember, our Accessible Ohio specialists are available to meet with businesses, employers, communities, venues, and attractions throughout Ohio. We will listen to your needs, provide resources, and engage in an ongoing partnership as we work towards our mission to empower everyone to experience all our great state has to offer in an equitable way. Please contact the Accessible Ohio specialists in your region to start a partnership with us. Our contact information is on our webpage, and a link is being provided in the chat area for your convenience. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and for your continued interest in our webinars.